Okay, welcome to part 3 of our history of Southern Africa. Remember, we have already covered the first part, the first group of the Bushmen, which was in the first part. We have looked at the Khoikhoi in the second part. And then the third part, we are looking at the Bantu. Okay, the Bantu are forming the third part of our discussion. Okay, I'm still Mr. KASIRYE, and we are going to look at the last subtopic. The last subtopic, which is that of the Bantu of Southern Africa. And remember, this Bantu of Southern Africa are different from the Bantu of Eastern Africa. When we are talking about them, it is an abomination if we want to make mention of groups like Baganda, Basoga, Bachiga, Banyankole. No, those ones were not Bantu of Southern Africa, but they are Bantu of Eastern Africa. So let us look at the Bantu of Southern Africa and we see what they were all about. We have a guiding question there. Who were the Bantu of South Africa? The first one, the word Bantu. The Bantu were a linguistic group that spoke related languages with the root word Intu or Hindu, which meant a person or people. The Bantu people belonged to the Negroid race or family. The word Negroid means black. They were black people. Okay? So their family was called Negroid, black family, which is different from the Bushmanoid family of the earliest groups of the Bushmen and the Khoikhoi we have looked at. Then the Bantu formed the largest group or the biggest percentage of the people of South Africa. Okay? They form the biggest population, the biggest percentage, which is 70%, meaning that the remaining 30 is shared by the Europeans who are there, the Asians, and some other racial groups. Then their origin is not clear like the earlier groups, still debatable. But historians agree that this Bantu might have migrated from West African areas around the Congo Basin. Okay, when the Bantu were migrating to South Africa, they migrated in four groups. Okay, the first group was that of the Shona. Then the second group was that of the Sotho Thwana. Nguni Songa was the third group, and then the fourth group or the last group was that of the Ovambo Helelo. Some books have Ambo Helelo, but they are the same. Okay. Then 2,000 years ago, those Bantu people, it is believed that they left West African areas of Niger Basin where they were living, and went to Central Africa. Okay, that was before reaching Southern Africa. Then about 1,000 years ago, after settling in Central Africa, the Bantu left Central Africa and moved to Southern Africa. Take note of those historical statements. Then their migration was slow and gradual. When you talk about a slow and gradual movement, it is all about forward and backward movement. Okay, forward and backward movement. You move forward 10 kilometers, then you move backward 6 kilometers. Maybe you are tracing for one of the lost animals. It may be a sheep. That is backward. When you get it, you continue forward. That is what we call a slow and gradual movement. Then let us look at the reasons why the Bantu of Southern Africa migrated to their cradleland. We have an introduction there, which we have already looked at. They were the third occupants, third after the Bushmen and the Khoikhoi. They spoke a language with a suffix into Ondu. Okay? And their origin not clear. Straight away we go to the reasons why they migrated. First one was diseases. Give an example of sleeping sickness, malaria. Then they wanted to export their centralized system of administration into South Africa. Occurrence of natural calamities or earthquakes was the other. Made them to move to Southern Africa. There was famine in their cradleland, so they moved in search for food. Then point 5, their population had increased in their cradleland, so they had to move to look for areas that were sparsely populated. Then the climate was harsh in their cradleland. Okay, harsh climate is characterized with a drought, and such climate could not favor their famous activities like farming, so they had to move to areas with favorable climate. Then they had love for adventure. Love for adventure is the same as group influence. They wanted to know what was beyond their homeland. Then internal conflicts was the other, civil wars or misunderstandings that forced them to move. Point 9, we have external conflicts, stroke hostile tribes. They were attacked by their neighbors. For example, the Pygmies from Congo attacked them, so they had to move. Then the desire to look for fresh hunting grounds was the other. They were looking for pasture and water for their animals. They wanted to export their culture of iron working. Okay, that is point 12. Remember, the Bantu were iron workers. They wanted to export that knowledge of making iron tools like hoes, pangas, arrows, and others to other societies. Then they also wanted to trade with other societies outside their homeland. Okay, then they were looking for fertile soil because they were farmers. Okay, their previous land had lost fertility. Conclusively, factors for migration were internal and external. Then let us look at the migration and the settlement of the Bantu. Okay, migration and the settlement of the Bantu, as I said, it is all about tracing the origin, tracing where they passed, tracing where they settled. And you first of all define the group in question. We have the Bantu. First, put the origin first. Okay, put the origin first. The origin we talked about first. Okay, the Bantu were the third group. They spoke related languages with a root word into Ondu, which meant a person or people. They belong to the Negroid family, make 70% of the total population. And then you say they migrated in 4 groups. Okay, for example, you can give an example of the 4 groups. Okay, you can give like the Shona and then proceed. Their migration was slow and gradual, origin not clear. Okay, moved between the 10th and 16th centuries. Okay, then historians believe, or scholars believe, that these Bantu migrated from West African areas around the Niger Congo basins, that is Cameroon highlands, stroke forests. Then others claim that they came from Central Africa. Okay, East Africa is also believed to have been their homeland. before moving to South Africa. They are believed to have started moving 2,000 years ago. Okay, then they moved in 4 groups. When you reach on the 4 groups, talk about group per group. But I normally tell students that when you talk about the group, when you go ahead and explain all the groups, the work will be too much for you. After giving that introduction on the origin, choose one group out of the 4 and you add the information of one group on the origin. Okay, you may decide to choose work on the Shona and you add it on the origin. You can decide to choose work on the Sotho, you add it on the origin. You can decide to choose work on the Nguni Songa, you add it there, or Ovambo Herero. The choice is yours. Let us look at the Shona and we see how the Shona moved. The Shona were the first to move, okay, out of the 4 groups, and they moved around the 9th century. The Shona did not reach South Africa, but settled in Zimbabwe, in an area we call Mashonaland. Okay, when they were in Zimbabwe, they formed the Kalanga Kingdom, okay, which gave rise to the Zimbabwean culture, okay, which sometimes we call the Kalanga culture. The Shona gave birth to tribes like the Venda and the Bemba. Okay, they produced those 2 tribes, the Venda and the Bemba. The Venda crossed River Limpopo. Okay, the Venda crossed River Limpopo and settled in the Limpopo Valley. Why did they go to the Limpopo Valley? That was after having conflicts with the Bemba. Okay, so they crossed River Limpopo and settled in the Limpopo Valley. That was the Venda in point F. Then let us look at the second group, the Sotho. Okay, the Sotho were the second group. Okay, that group is also known as the central wave of the Bantu, and that is because it took the central direction, okay, and finally settled in the central part of Southern Africa. They were also close relatives of the Malope and the Malolongo. Okay, they moved between Lake Malawi and Lake Tanganyika. Okay, that was around the 13th and the 16th centuries. Then this group comprised of 3 main subdivisions. After reaching South Africa, the Thwana finally settled. After reaching South Africa, the Thwana finally settled in Botswana. Okay, the Thwana settled in Botswana. That is the subgroup of the Sotho. Then the Tawana, an example of the Thwana, settled around the banks of River Ngami. Banks we are meaning areas around the river. Okay, around the Ngami River. That is where they settled. Then the Sotho also settled around the confluence of River Vaal and the Orange. Hope you know what we mean by the word river confluence. A river confluence is where 2 rivers meet. Okay, some people call it a junction, but that is not geographical. Okay, the geographical word is confluence, a place where 2 rivers meet. Where the Vaal met the Orange River, that is where some of the Sotho settled. Then the Sotho mainly had tribes like the Sotho, the Thwana, Basuto, Kwena, and others. They also settled in Transvaal, Orange Free State, among others. The Sotho finally settled in the present day Lesotho. Okay, present day Lesotho. Now learners, let us look at the 3rd group of the Bantu. Okay, and the 3rd group of the Bantu we said it is known as the Nguni Songa. Nguni Songa. It is sometimes known as the Eastern Bantu. Why Eastern Bantu? Because it took the eastern direction when it was moving to South Africa. And it is said the eastern group or the eastern wave was the largest of the 4 groups. After reaching South Africa, the Songa remained in Mozambique. The Songa were the relatives of the Nguni Songa, so the Songa did not reach South Africa but remained in Mozambique. Okay? Then the Nguni, who continued to South Africa, gave birth to various tribes. For example, the Xhosa, the Zulu, the Ndebele, the Swazi, among others. The Zulu moved along the eastern coastal strip and finally settled in Natal and the eastern parts of the Cape. Okay, so they were attracted there by the fertile soils that were in Zululand, okay, or in Natal. That is why they chose to settle there. Then the Xhosa reached the upper part of River Umuzimvubu around 1300 AD. Okay. Then by 1593, they had reached Umtata River. It is believed that after 200 years, they were already living around the banks of River Fish. They also settled around River together, and today they occupy parts of Zululand, Transvaal, Natal, Cape Province, and the others. Then let us look at the last group of the Bantu. The last group is known as the Ovambo Helelo. Ovambo Helelo. Ovambo Helelo. And I said if not called Ovambo Helelo, it is known as Ambo Helelo. Okay? And sometimes that group is also known as Western Bantu. Why Western Bantu? This group settled in the western part of Southern Africa. That is Namibia. Okay? That is Namibia. Namibia is found in the southwestern part of Africa. So the Ovambo Helelo, sometimes they are known as the Southwestern Bantu because they settled in the southwestern part of Africa. That was the last group or the 4th group to enter South Africa after the other 3. Okay? And also known as the Western Wave. Their migration occurred around the 16th century. The Helelo settled in the highlands of Namibia, and most of them were cattle keepers. Okay? Highlands of Namibia. And you can even say the Helelo settled in Heleloland. Okay? The Helelo settled in Heleloland. Heleloland, those are the highlands of Namibia. Okay? Then the Ovambo settled in Amboland, and most of them were farmers. Okay? On the groups you just added the word land. Ovambo settled in Ovamboland. If you have used the Ambo, this word Ambo, A-M-B-O, you say the Ambo settled in Amboland, and you stop there. Okay? Then, like other groups we have used, we have talked about the Bushmen, the Khoikhoi, and the Khoisan. Still on the Bantu, we go ahead and draw a sketch map. A sketch map, I said, it is supposed to have the key basics of a true map. First, it is supposed to have the title. And when we are stating the title, we say a sketch map. Okay? A sketch map. Don't say a map, because what we are drawing is a sketch. Okay? A sketch map of South Africa showing the migration and settlement of the Bantu. We get the title from the question. If the question is saying explain or describe the migration and the settlement of the Bantu, so we are going to get that title from that question and you just put the word sketch map, those two words, a sketch map of South Africa showing the migration and settlement of the Bantu. Then you put the flame, that is the flame, okay, that box is the frame. You trace your map, okay, you put the compass direction, you put the letter N here, okay, letter N to indicate north, write N there, okay. Then you sketch in the map, okay, you sketch in the flame, okay, you just put that letter U, does not have any dynamic, you just put letter U like this, okay, like that, okay. Then what we are interested in is the movement of these people, okay. These other things inside don't matter much, but can you indicate to us where the Ngunisonga passed? We said the Ngunisonga used the coastal strip and settled in Natal or Zululand. So here we are having the Ngunisonga moving, and they settled around here in Zululand, okay. Then we have the second group called the Sotho-Fona. We said the Sotho-Fona are also known as the central wave, okay. Are you seeing them entering the central, in the central direction in the middle of South Africa, okay? That is why they are called the Central Bantu, and they occupied the areas of Botswana, okay. Those were the Fona that settled in Botswana. Then the Sotho, okay, continued and settled in Lesotho. That is the small country called Lesotho. Then the last group of the Ovambo Herero, which we have called the Southwestern Bantu, they settled in Namibia, okay. This is Namibia. Namibia is here, okay, in Namibia. Just use these two arrows, okay, to show the Southwestern Bantu or the Ovambo Herero who settled here. Now, as you see on the map and even on our key, we have not indicated the Shona, because remember we said the Shona did not reach South Africa. The Shona, the first group, but remained in Zimbabwe here, where they formed the Kalanga Kingdom or Kalanga culture. So for them, they did not proceed southwards like this Central Bantu or the Sotho-Fona, and then the Eastern Bantu known as the Ngunisonga, then the Southwestern Bantu Ovambo Herero. So we don't even indicate them on our key. So after that, you'll get your 2 marks. 1 mark for the title and 1 for the allocation of those groups, showing how they moved with the arrows and the areas of settlement. Then next we have the effects of the Bantu, how the migration of the Bantu affected the Khoisan. We talk about the Khoisan, we are meaning the Khoikhoi and the Sani, okay. Then they can again ask you, how did the Bantu relate with the Khoisan? You can relate with someone negatively or positively. Even their migration in the first question affected the Khoisan positively or negatively. What are we supposed to give in that question? We give the positive and the negative effects the Bantu had on their Khoisan, okay. So the first word statements are just making the introduction. So what are the effects? The effects are there in the body. First, the Khoisan adopted farming from the Bantu. Remember, they didn't know farming, but they later learned it from the Bantu and decided carrying out what? Farming that is positive. Then another one, they adopted the Bantu cultures. Okay, they traded with them. The Bantu intermarried with the Khoisan. They married the Khoisan women, and it is said that they even gave birth to a group of people known as the Thembu. Okay, the Thembu, after the intermarriage. Then the Khoisan started living a settled life. They grew crops like sorghum. They learned new farming methods from the Bantu. The Khoisani were raided by the Bantu for food. Okay. Then wives of the Khoisani were raided and raped by the Bantu. We are now on the negative. Wars broke out between the Khoisan and the Bantu over land and the cattle. When the wars broke out, what happened? Lives were lost. Okay, the Khoikhoi and the Sani, or the Khoisani, lost their lives to the Bantu. The Khoikhoi and the Sani lost their properties. The Khoikhoi and the Bantu, rather the Khoikhoi and the Sani lost their hunting grounds. The Khoikhoi adopted the social political way of life of the Bantu. They were detribalized. They lost their cultures. That led, there was misery and suffering that came after the outbreak of wars between the Khoisani and the Bantu, and so many others you can think of. You can talk about displacement. The Bantu displaced the Khoisan. Okay, the Bantus grabbed the Khoisani land. Okay, and then others. Then you conclude that both related, the Khoisan and the Bantu related positively and negatively. That's what the conclusion is supposed to be there. In the conclusion, the effects of the Bantu on the Khoisan were positive and negative. Then we go to the organization of the Bantu. The organization is the way of life, as I've already explained. Social organization first. Family, the smallest social unity. They were religious. The Bantu were religious people, and their god was called Modimo. Modimo is different from the god of the first two groups. The one of the Sun we said was Kageni. The one for the Khoikhoi we said was Soigoab. So the one for the Bantu is Modimo. They also loved the storytelling, where they used to sit around fireplaces to listen to stories from elders. Believed in life after death. Lived in big groups. The Bantu were polygamous. Okay, they had respect for elders. Then, point 8, local herbs were used by the Bantu to cure minor diseases. Okay, then the Bantu lived in thatched houses, which were made of reed and grass. Then the Bantu practiced initiation ceremonies. Those initiation ceremonies included the circumcision, circumcising the young ones to introduce them to new stages of life. Then the Bantu feared witchcraft, and any person suspected to be carrying out witchcraft was given a poisonous herb called milavi. A poisonous herb called milavi. In case the person was innocent, would vomit the milavi, and in case he was guilty, that person would die. Okay, that is the fear the Bantu had for witchcraft. And they had the female regiments. Female regiments, those were groups of women that were organized to fight and defend their societies. Okay, they were there more so during the days of Shaka. Then economically, they were cattle keepers. Okay, they used to drink milk from their cattle. They engaged in food gathering. They carried out hunting, carried out fishing, engaged in barter trade amongst themselves and later with other societies. Iron working was part of them. They made iron tools, pangas, arrows, knives, hoes for their activities like farming. hunting, fighting, etc. Farming was the main activity of the Bantu. They grew crops like millet, sorghum. Those are the crops they grew. Okay. Then the king or the chief among the Bantu was the controller of all the activities. For example, during the days of Shaka, he was the chief controller of all the activities. Work was divided according to sex. That is point 10. Work was divided according to sex. Men did hard jobs while women were given light activities, okay, like looking after children and growing food, while men hunted and looked after cattle. Land among the Bantu was communally owned. It was for the whole community. Then, political organization. The Bantu were led by chiefs or kings. Okay? Chiefs or kings. They were very organized. Okay? You know some of the chiefs like Chief Bambata, King Shaka, Sobuza, Dingswayo, and the others. They had a standing army. Okay? They had a standing army to ensure security. They had a hereditary system of administration, meaning that when the king died, it was the son to take over. They were centralized, i.e., they were led by a king or a chief. Okay? Then, the king had the final powers to sentence someone to death. And this was common among the Nguni speakers like the Zulu. The chiefs were assisted by clan heads who solved the minor cases. Okay? They also carried out raiding to the neighbors. For example, the Khoisan, the Sani and the Khoikhoi for food, cattle and women. They had the council meetings, and these were open to all male adults. For example, there was one group of the Bantu called the Basuto. They had a council meeting called the Pitso, P-I-T-S-O, okay, which was a meeting for all the male adults among the Basuto during the days of Chief Moshesh. Then, conclusively, they were organized politically, socially, and economically. Okay? Then the other part, why the Bantu were easily defeated. Why the Bantu easily defeated the Khoisan. Remember, the Khoisan were a combination of the Khoikhoi and the San. But the Bantu were stronger than them. Why were they stronger? The Bantu had the iron tools. Okay? Iron tools like arrows, pangas to fight, which the Khoisan didn't have. And the Bantu were muscular people. Okay? So here, just to give the strength the Bantu had over the Khoisan. Okay? And you can also go ahead and make mention of the weaknesses of the Khoisani. Okay? So that is what we give there. So what were the weaknesses of the Bantu? Rather, the strength of the Bantu. The Bantu had superior weapons. Okay? That outmatched those of the Khoikhoi. They also engaged in iron smelting and made the arrows. The Bantu were many in number. Okay? So the Khoisan could not compete with them. They also absorbed the Khoisan. Okay? They also absorbed the Khoisan communities, which gave them an advantage, hence being able to displace them. Then the Bantu had military tactics like surprise attacks, which involved attacking at night. Okay? They could attack the enemy at night when the enemy was not prepared. Then they had the able leaders. Able leaders like Zwange Ndawa, Shaka, and others. Practiced farming and hence had stable food supply amongst the warriors. They lived a more settled life than the Khoisan, which gave them an advantage. And then the other is unity, where the Bantu were more united than the Khoisan. Engaged in external trade, foreign trade with the neighbors, which enabled them to acquire military weapons, and the Khoisan had poor economies, okay, which could not finance the war for a long period of time. The Bantu had standing armies. They were more built than the Khoisan in terms of physical appearance. That is what I talked about first. Okay, they had that physique, muscular, strong, and able-bodied. Then the Bantu were more determined than the Khoisan. Okay, were more determined than the Khoisan. Then we have the comparison between the Bantu and the Khoisan. Okay, comparison between the Bantu and the Khoisan. We have the introduction there. Introduction on the Khoisan, combination of the Khoikhoi and the San. Okay, they were the first occupants, belonged to the Bushmanoid family, whereas the Bantu were the third group and belonged to the Negroid race or family, which we said was the family of blacker people. So in the comparison we give similarities and differences. Okay, so what are those similarities between the two groups? Family amongst them was the best social unit. Okay, both celebrated important stages in lives, e.g. marriage, childbirth, etc. Both practiced polygamy, both the San and the Bantu. Okay, land amongst both was communally owned. Both respected the elders. Both Bantu and the Khoisan were religious people. They had their gods. You remember, Khoikhoi had Thoigowabu, San had Kageni, the Bantu had Modimo. And both believed in life after death, where we said that they had a belief that the dead were not what? Dead, but they just changed the environment, okay, after dying. Then both loved storytelling, where they used to sit around fireplaces to listen to stories of long ago. Food gathering was common amongst both. Okay, then the Bantu and the Khoisan were both traders. Both carried out fishing. That is point 12 from the rivers that are found in southern Africa. Then both engaged in raids. They could raid each other for food, for animals, for women, etc. Okay, both had the clans. Both they were hunters. Okay, and both are the elders, okay, that commanded respect. Okay, now let us look at the differences. The Khoisan didn't have a standing army, while the Bantu had a standing army. Take note of that. The Bantu were advanced in their way of life than the Khoisan. Okay, the Bantu were iron workers, while the Khoisan were not. Okay, the Khoisan danced upon seeing the new and full moon, which was not common with the Bantu. Okay, the Bantu were farmers, the Khoisan were not farmers. The Khoisan were peaceful, the Bantu were not. Okay, and that is why the Bantu displaced them. Then, unlike the Khoisan, the Bantu were centralized. Okay, talk about the other side. The Bantu were centralized, then the Khoisan were decentralized. Okay, then the Khoisan respected their praying mantis, which was the source of blessing, okay, and happiness from their gods, and the Bantu didn't. Okay, the Bantu lived in big groups than those of the Khoisan. Then, unlike the Khoisan, the Bantu lived a more settled life. Then the Bantu married slightly at a higher age than that of the Khoisan. We can say at a later date, okay, while the Khoisan married at an early age. That is the end of part 3. I thank you for listening.
It took somehow longer time.